Go ahead and call the meeting to order, and start with a roll call again. McKee here, Schultz
Here.
Bottoman.
Yep.
Varenkamp.
Yes. Here.
Nichols. Here. Perfect. We'll go right on to the Pledge of Allegiance. If you want to stand and join. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Agenda approval. Is there anything from staff?
Mayor, we have two items on the dais. We had one minor change to the budget and levy hearing on page 13. We added a tax rate change, and then we did have one minor amendment on the wage scale for part-time police officers. So those are the items in front of you on the dais. Besides that, we didn't have any changes to the agenda.
Sounds good. Anything from council? No. No. All right. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as modified with those two changes that Jessica outlined.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Commission representatives, we do have Jim Shulock and John Dugan online, maybe?
Yes,
Perfect.
I believe both of them are.
Sounds good. We will go on to open forum for items not on tonight's agenda.
Thank you, Mayor. We have not received any participation cards from anyone in the audience here. Anyone who's joining us online can press *9 if they're joining us on a phone. Otherwise, they can click reactions and raise your hand under the participants tab. But at this time, Mayor, no one is raising their hand.
Okay. Give it a couple seconds.
While we're waiting,
Yeah.
I'll jump in. Thank you, Public Works. Bechtold signs are up. And then, thanks for staff advising me on that crossbox with CenturyLink. So
Awesome.
we'll continue to pursue those things, and those were my public opportunities last time. So thank you, guys.
Appreciate the updates.
Thank you. And Mayor, no one is raising their hand
Okay.
at this time.
Then we'll go right into item 6, which we have a watershed update from Ken and Chris. Appreciate it.
Good evening, Mayor,
Evening.
Council, staff, thanks for letting me talk tonight. Also participating tonight is, by the way, for the public that might be listening in, I'm Ken Genthner, and I am the Corcoran Commissioner on the Elm Creek Watershed Management Commission. With me tonight is Chris Gensel, remote. Chris is a senior water resource specialist with Hennepin County Environment and Energy. And Chris will be talking a little bit about his department's activities in Corcoran. I want to start out and just briefly tonight, I'm going to talk about the Watershed Commission at a very sort of high level of introduction. And then Chris will give his presentation, but I'm also going to, at the end, ask if I can come back a couple of times during the upcoming year to talk a little bit more in depth about certain components of the watershed, its function, opportunities, obligations, and how that relates to Corcoran. I know for several years that I was involved up here, the watershed was always this kind of behind the curtains type of operation. We knew it impacted us, but it really wasn't present day to day. And I think it would really be beneficial to you all to sort of have a sense of what does it do and why and when should we care about what it does. I think that's important. So tonight, like I said, I'm just going to very, very briefly introduce the watershed. What I'd like to do when I come back during the upcoming years, maybe I'll present the watershed's annual work plan. We're required by law to submit an annual work plan. And then update that every year, and that gets reported back to the Board of Soil and Water Resources. I also want to talk about some of the major studies that the watershed has conducted in the city of Corcoran, both on a large scale across the entire watershed, not tonight, but at a subsequent meeting. And then it's called a sub-watershed assessment, which is a very detailed study that's taken place in the southern half of Corcoran, where water quality is the primary focus of the study. And then at another meeting, if possible, and I can follow up with staff maybe to schedule this and talk about how it would work and when. I'd like to talk about the watershed as a funding conduit. The Watershed Commission itself is very involved in facilitating grant opportunities for water quality improvements in the watershed and the communities to various other parties in interest. And one of the watershed's other primary responsibilities is community education, and that takes place in a lot of different levels of education on water as a resource. So I'll begin with a little bit of an introduction, and then I'm going to turn it over to Chris to talk about the county's activities. There are two primary areas under state law where Corcoran has an obligation to be involved with surface water, and one of them that you've heard about is the Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System Permitting Process, MS4. Okay. And if you haven't heard of that or aren't familiar with it, it's basically, it applies to storm water management programs, generally in areas served with constructed systems. So when you have a municipal sewer and water system, you have a storm system that's a part of a municipal improvement. That's generally what's covered by the MS4 permit. Interestingly, Corcoran first became governed under the MS4 permit process when we improved, it was just a ditch or a swale in the downtown area, sort of alongside and behind the strip mall over there. It wasn't even a manufactured storm system, but because it fell under the definition of water conveyance, stormwater conveyance or whatever, and that pulled us within the permit. And then the permit kicks in when you reach a certain population, and there are other criteria. That's not, the MS4 process is not what the Watershed Commission is about. Under state law basically created, this is Chapter 103B, Metropolitan Area Surface Water Management Organizations. And it was an attempt to get a uniform approach to managing surface water on a metro-wide basis. So it's sort of a broader jurisdictional effort similar to what the Met Council does, but not quite the same. State law requires local units of government, LGUs, you hear that acronym frequently, to create and implement surface water management plans and procedures. And then by law, the law set up the jurisdictional areas based on the major watersheds. So obviously we're in Elm Creek, you've heard of, say, Minnehaha, Bassett Creek,
Coon Creek, Capillary.
Pioneer, Lake Sarah, et cetera, et cetera. So they generally follow the boundaries of those major watersheds. Originally, Corcoran was also in the Pioneer, Lake Sarah watershed organization, but that's what, maybe 30 acres, 50 acres in the very southwest corner of Corcoran drains into the Pioneer Sarah watershed. So we got an exemption to redraw the boundaries. So now geographically, Corcoran just deals with the Elm Creek watershed. And I don't even know jurisdictionally that little corner in the southwest corner that drains towards Lake Sarah, how that's handled. If Sarah Pioneer does that, or do you know, Kevin?
Yeah, they manage it, or Elm Creek rules apply to it, but we still are part of their TMDL. So there's still a connection, but it's simplified.
So anyway, the law also said that the cities within these watersheds could collaborate by a joint powers agreement to manage the watershed activities. So cities by joint power agreement can create management organizations to accomplish their management plan requirements. So within the Elm Creek Watershed Management Commission jurisdiction, the member cities are Champlin, Corcoran, Dayton, Maple Grove, Medina, and Plymouth. Each city has an appointed commissioner. At some point, you all appointed me, and I don't remember when. But you're supposed to do it. Maybe that's part of your annual business meeting that you have in January. And then we also have a representative on the Technical Advisory Committee. So each city sends one of their technical staff to participate in that committee. Kevin's our representative there. There are two non-voting members on the Watershed Commission, Three Rivers Park District, and they have an extensive natural resources endeavor, and they obviously manage significant natural resource areas within the county, so they're a very active participant in the watershed. And Hennepin County itself, and they have they're pretty well-resourced staff involved in natural resource management. Let's see, so the Elm Creek Watershed Management Committee then allows the cities to collaborate and fulfill their obligation as local government units to do surface water management planning, and regulatory oversight. So the part that you all see on a regular basis is when you get a development application in, it's reviewed in-house. Kevin sends it with all the supporting materials, the applicants, the property owner and the project developer, sends it to the watershed, and then the watershed's technical review staff reviews it for compliance with the statutory mandated regulations. And in fact, if and when I come back to a subsequent meeting, I can show you a little bit of what our review memos look like. So monthly then the commission meets, and the commissioners are then required to approve or reject these applications for consistency with the regulations. The local government unit, the city of Corcoran, the city of Medina, the city of Dayton, retains the legal authority and jurisdiction to enforce those standards. So in effect, we're the equivalent of a staff recommendation to you all. It's a little bit the equivalent of getting your planner's report, and the planner will confirm, yeah, this application is consistent with your ordinances, or no, it's inconsistent in the following areas. Here are some options, do what you want to do. So when you get it back from the Watershed Commission, in a sense, that's what you're getting back. And it's ultimately the city's responsibility to adopt those recommendations as a part of its approval process and then conduct oversight. So I talked about the technical review process. The couple other things that the watershed does is it sets common surface water management policy standards. So each one of the communities are on somewhat the same playing field for how they approach surface water management. I talked about the technical review on the applications, and then the final thing, as I mentioned, it's a funding source. The Watershed Commission acts as a funding source. So we're involved with 3 areas of funding. One, we have dues. Each of the member cities pays a set dues amount every year, and that supports the commission's administrative function. It's just, you know, the lights and that kind of stuff. The administrator who actually notices the meeting, takes the minutes, that kind of thing. We have application fees, and that pays for the technical review process, and we have a similar thing that the city does, escrow. The developers basically are paying for that review via an escrow system, so we make that a user fee. And then the final source is the commission actually can request a levy that is included in the county's annual levy. So the commission by law can levy up to request a levy of up to $500,000 annually, and then that money is used solely for capital improvement projects. And this is one of the things I'd like to talk about at a subsequent meeting, where applicants could come in and request grant funding to do water improvement projects. And then the Watershed Commission will approve that and will be a grant funder with a community, or we've worked with, for example, lakeshore associations, you know, Fish Lake, Weaver Lake, whatever, groups will come in and ask for funding to do a project, and then the commission has criteria for evaluating that and then possibly funding it on a grant type of basis. So there is a levy power there, which is why it's important, again, for the cities to care and be involved, because I've never heard the county not rubber stamping the commission's levy request. We don't have the authority to do it directly. It gets incorporated into the county's levy, but I've never heard of one being rejected. So there is reason for the city to want to be represented in that process. Our taxpayers are paying for these projects. So that's a very brief overview of what we do. I'm going to turn it over to Chris Gensel, again, like I said, and then when he's done with his presentation, I just have a couple wrap-up comments. So
Sounds
with
good.
that.
Thanks, Ken. Mayor, my Keating councilors, thank you for having me. I'd like to thank Ken for all of his work. He's been very helpful in the work we've done with the county and in working with the Creek Watershed Management Commission. There's a couple of things I want to present on. First, projects we're working on in Corcoran, and then also what we have in front of us now, the Natural Resource Strategic Plan. On the first one, we have a map that we provided to Ken and his staff to share with councilors that outlines some of the work we're doing. Yep, there you go, thank you. I'm not going to go through this in any great detail, but it gives a flavor of some of the work the county is doing with regards to rural conservation. The county, Hennepin County, doesn't have a soil and water conservation district. That was dissolved about 10 years ago and incorporated within Hennepin County. but we still serve a lot of that same role the Stormwater Conservation District would do. And that's providing rural conservation and drainage services to members of the public. And that's primarily focused in western parts of Hennepin County, which include Corcoran. So take a look at that map. We have several projects on there we're working on now that range from helping with septic tanks to helping with drainage water management, implementing conservation practices such as farmers' fields that might have grass waterways, water and sediment control basins, wetland restorations, to helping just answer questions that homeowners may have regarding issues they're seeing on their property. And I would definitely welcome, if you know of any folks in your city that have any questions, provide my contact information. Ken has it, and Kevin has it. We're happy to help in any way we can. And this was provided to a meeting with city staff, I think a couple months ago. And there might be some edits from that meeting we had, but that was kind of a first of its kind meeting, I should say, to help to increase coordination between the city and the county. We oftentimes don't always coordinate as well as we can, and we want to improve that as well as we can. So I think we're due for another meeting, maybe the end of season wrap up, and we'll look for ways to better coordinate with city staff. And then getting back to the Natural Resources Strategic Plan, what this plan is really a guiding document. It's our comp plan, our 10-year comp plan that we're statutorily obligated to do, serving as a Stormwater Conservation District. And this plan will outline all the areas the county invests in related to natural resource and water resource management. We've asked Ken to participate in one of our collaboration groups, which is a more informal TAC, or Technical Advisory Committee. We want him to serve really in his role as an Elm Creek Watershed Management Commission, but also be able to tap a lot of his knowledge, being on city staff and mayor for so many years. He's really a bottomless pit of knowledge related to a lot of the work LGUs do, cities especially, and also the watershed management organizations. The second page of that, which I believe is page 5 of the packet materials, has a nice little calendar of what we're doing and when we're doing it. You can peruse that on your own time. But the gist of it is we've just started with outreach. We're contacting our communities, doing community events, including in Corcoran. We were at Heidi's Grow House Oktoberfest, I think 2 months ago now. And kind of getting the word out about what we're working on and trying to get feedback about values people have and issues people are seeing related to natural resource management. We're just wrapping that up now. We're not going to do any indoor events now with COVID and the pandemic being as they are, but we're going back to our virtual work, that collaboration group I mentioned, meeting with our partners and building consensus on what they want to see for goals and objectives moving forward. So with your permission, Ken will be participating in that group, serving his role as commissioner and council member or councilor representative, I should say. And we hope to expand on that over this winter. And we're leading towards having a plan in place around summer that will open up to the public for comment. And then hopefully have it be board approved by early winter, hopefully around this time next year. An overview 2 of that plan, I just realizing I failed to mention, 2 is that will really outline where we see for investments across the county. 2 initiatives we're looking at now, disparity reduction and climate change, will be really repositioning where we invest. And that climate change especially, I think, will be important in communities like Corcoran that are starting to grow now and have a chance to invest in areas that will really help to keep it resilient and really help to make it a great community moving forward. And we're really committed to working in this area, both in that lens, but also with helping our rural farmers and other landowners implement conservation wherever they can. And that's the end of my spiel.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. I just want to finish up here by, again, thanking Chris and his staff. The staff at Hennepin Environmental has become much more active in our community, and they've done it on a much more user-friendly basis, I think, than has occurred in the past. Maybe in the distant past, a lot of the landowners had the feeling that when somebody from the county or the city showed up, it was usually going to be a bad experience. And they've had a lot of success with voluntary support and programs for landowners using best management practices when it comes to their water resource, and particularly relates to large animals and manure management and those types of things. So I can tell you that it's a much different scene than it would have been, say, 10 or 15 years ago, and largely due to the folks from the county and the approach that they've taken. That's really improved. I just want to plant a little bit of a seed tonight, and I'm going to talk about it more when I come back in the new year, and that is, as the city, and it's timely that you've been talking about the water system, and going through all of that. Eventually, when the city finds it appropriate to hire someone in Public Works who's tasked with managing that system or monitoring that system, a water system tech, I think it would be useful to also think about adding a couple hours a week to include in the job description surface water management responsibilities. I think it would be a really good opportunity to leverage a skill set and do sort of couple of reasons, do a community-wide approach for that person, because the county has done such a good job in terms of getting started with active surface water management programs. I know if the county's priorities shift away from that activity, it'd be nice to have somebody involved in the community that knows the community, that can keep track of that, that can serve as a liaison with the county and the watershed as a part of a regular, portion of their job description. And that, I would envision that wouldn't occur, obviously, until the city reaches this, at the point where its staffing resource includes somebody who's tasked, like I said, with keeping an eye on the constructed system that you're working on. But I just wanted to plant that seed tonight, and I'll talk about it a little bit more as the year goes on, hopefully, if you have me back. And I guess it dawned on me I should ask to maybe be reappointed to be on the commission. I'd like to serve next year. It's been that's been one of the soft appointments. I know all the years that we took care of all of the other appointments, and that one I think technically probably needs to be added.
Yes, I added that actually
January.
to my list tonight to double check on and make sure.
But
we know we're looking at that.
I also believe in succession planning, so I want to make sure that I'm not the only one around here who knows about this stuff. So that's my pitch. All right.
Thank
Thank you so
Ken.
much.
Thank you.
We'd love to have you back anytime, so just reach out to me
And,
or Jessica or whoever, and
Yeah,
Get us
well,
that.
I've really enjoyed it, and it takes a while to peel through the layers on it, and that's why I want to make sure that some of the knowledge gets spread around a little bit.
perfect.
Mr. Mayor, could I add a little color to the?
Yeah,
So my very first foray into public service was the Corcoran's representative to the watershed. And so I think I was your predecessor. And I'll give you a little bit of color to what he's talking about. There was a survey that went out, and people walked around and they drove up people's driveways. And one of the survey responses was, I'm not going to respond to your survey. I'm also going to tell all of my neighbors not to respond to your survey. And like that was kind of how the watershed people were treated by landowners, because the watershed was had the reputation well earned of being very heavy-handed.
gotcha.
They weren't welcome, and I was a part of it for a little bit, and we had other than that sub-watershed, we had no projects in Corcoran. And so, and they always, the watershed always wanted to fine everybody in compliance, and part of it was we've got to get a little more active in getting in front of people. So these are a lot of projects, and more than I would have envisioned 5 years ago even. These are all new, and it's testament to your taking the,
Not me.
well, you're taking the, and collaborating with the watershed, and then also being receptive to landowners. So Ken's position is really, it's a really important spot. So I would support you coming to keep us, up to date. I don't know if you've been here for 3 years even. So you've got to come back.
Well, I forgot to mention too, I'm also the treasurer, and I definitely want to watch out for the Corcoran purse in that organization. So we've been working on our reporting and our transparency, all of that.
So thank you for all your work.
Yeah,
I really
definitely.
Thanks.
Have a good one.
If I can jump in real quick on this. Not speaking as a counselor, but one of your projects on the map.
Is that right?
And to your timelines and stuff, John, it was 4 years ago when Hennepin County came down my driveway. And surface water issue, I'm right dead center here, the Bechtold Road one. Kevin, it's Kevin, right?
Yeah, Kevin Ellis.
Kevin has recently taken over. I've been waiting 4 years for a plan, something to help with the surface water that I've been trying to drain, and I haven't gotten anything. So are there timelines on these projects
Yeah.
other than next fall?
Boy, I'm glad.
Is there a way to expedite it and
Councilman,
stuff? Because
yeah.
I have spent almost $10,000 doing tree removal, those kind of things along this swale where the water comes out of the tiles and
Right.
starts across the
Right.
property. And
Right.
mine is actually part of the Rush Creek shed is what I'm
Yeah, right.
told. So I'm asking that as a resident, so
I'm really glad you're asking.
is there any
I have
way
a
to get a
feeling-
reimbursement on what I've spent so
Well,
far?
I can't speak to your specific project, because
Yep.
until you just mentioned it, I didn't know about it. But I have the feeling you'd probably be getting a phone call.
I think I was the first one to jump on.
Yeah.
The young lady that came in was just nervous as all could be, and we spent 2.5 hours
Yeah.
showing the issue that I had.
I had the sort of privilege and good fortune to be part of the interview committee that hired the current
Chris,
field person.
Good.
Kevin Ellis.
Kevin,
He's
excuse me.
a very qualified guy, and I think you're gonna be pretty happy with the support that he provides you. I'll follow up, I'll find out.
And my thing, Ken, was the standing water at the intersection of Bechtold and County Road 10, the northeast corner. It was about 3.5 acres. It would drain, it would fill up, it would drain, it would fill up. I've spent, as a responsible landowner, trying to help that farmer farm his land, and it all drains through my property.
Well, I'll tell you, my first impression, this goes back to, way back when, war story. I mean, it was our junior engineer, Vince Vandertop, who was with Bonestro at the time, had just started as the city's engineer. And we had a sequence of property owners, was it on Meadow Lane? Yeah, I can't remember, but they were all adjoining creek property owners, and they were having a problem because everybody was starting to create their own mini dike. So every spring, in order to keep their own backyard dry, they were building embankments along the creek, and of course, all that did was push it into the next door neighbor's property. And I remember, about my fourth meeting in that chair, asking Vince, can we create some sort of organization that coordinates this connection, which is the water, and takes care of this? And Vince started just ticking off all of the agencies and jurisdictions that basically, as I put it, had the power to say no, but no one was gonna come in and say, we're here to help you, we're here to make this all work. That's what we're seeing more and more. It's taken a long time. I think we're getting to that point. And like I say, there are still plenty of overlapping jurisdictions that are gonna jump in and say no, unfortunately.
My biggest issue is I've got about 2 acres I have no access to when the water's running through this swale, and I'm to the point now where creating a footbridge or something so I can access my 2.5 acres that I can't when
Water's our
it's
common bond.
terrible wet, but I want to do it responsibly. I don't want to do it right. So anything you can do to give me, I would really appreciate it. Thank you.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, we'll go on to consent agenda, consisting of items 7A through H, I believe. Get the right page up. Does anyone want to pull anything? Nope, okay. Then I will entertain a motion to approve consent agenda items 7A through 7H.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Planning business, we don't have any.
Yes.
So on to unfinished business. We'll have a public comment opportunity for items 9A, B, C, D, and E, all right now. And then go on.
Thank you, Mayor. We have not received any public comment cards for anyone here in the audience, but anyone joining us virtually, you can press star 9 or click reactions and raise your hand. Mayor, at this time, no one's raising their hand virtually. We'll wait a moment if you would like.
Sounds good.
Do we have anyone online? How many people?
We do. We have 11 participants. A few of them are staff, but I would say several of them are interested residents.
Welcome for listening.
Yeah.
Feel free to come in sometime.
Yeah.
Warm in here.
All right, we'll go on to 9A, which is the budget and levy hearing for the 2022 budget and property tax levy.
Can I make a motion?
Not on this one.
I can't.
Well,
On this one,
I think
we
we have
do
to have the
have
hearing.
to have a, this is our required.
Oh, it's a hearing,
Yep.
sorry.
Yes, it's our
My bad.
The budget
annual
falls later.
budget and levy, but
Fair
yes,
enough.
we'd be happy to do that in the future. So, Mayor and Council, I have Maggie here, Maggie Young, our finance manager. Go ahead, Maggie.
Thank you. So to start off with, I want to go through the budget and levy timeline. This process starts in April with the county having an open book meeting. However, this year and last year, the open book meeting was canceled due to the pandemic, and they requested that appointment be made via phone and email for any appeals or questions. In June and July, staff began drafting the budget with department requests and needs to meet the goals and objective of the council that was collected at the June 10th council meeting. Next slide. And as staff continues to refine the budget based on directions at the August 12th work session, at the September 23rd council meeting, the preliminary budget was adopted. And then after that adoption, staff continued to refine the budget. On the October 28th council meeting, the compensation structure amendment was approved by the council. And then in November, the Hennepin County sent out property-specific notices on the proposed levy and the taxes for 2021, payable in 2022. In mid-November, next slide. In mid-November, the city received the proposed tax rate. So if you go to the next slide.
Freeze.
I'm trying to work on it. It's not. Give me a second here.
You have to close out of that menu, maybe.
Yeah, that's not.
I can keep going.
Yeah.
So in mid-November, the city received the proposed tax rate. Rate information showing that 43.313% was the tax rate for 2022. The 2021 rate was 43.522, so that was a decrease from this year. At the November 22nd council meeting, staff continued to refine the budget, and we were able to reduce the tax levy by $29,417. That resulted in a projected tax rate of 43.099 for 2022. And now today, the December 9th council meeting, we are holding the budget meeting and the truth and taxation hearing. And the goals for this hearing is to walk through proposed budget and levy, to educate those that are interested in what is included in the proposed budget and levy for 2021, payable in 2022, as well as to hold a formal public hearing to receive any comments from the public. So before beginning the hearing, I want to go through some of the definitions. Revenue is the money received by the city from taxes, fees, charges for service, such as permits and then permits and fines. Expenditure is the money spent towards the operation of the city, such as services, repairs, maintenance, improvement, salaries of staff. And then general levy is the property tax dollar needed to fund the operation of the city. This is the gap between the known revenue, such as service, permits, and fines, and then what is needed to cover the remaining expenditure. And then debt levy is the property tax dollars needed to pay for the debt of the city. So the property tax levy is made up of the general levy and the debt levy. On this slide, I have two pie charts showing the 2021 revenue versus 2022 revenue by source. And you'll see as the years go by, taxes is decreasing as a source of revenue for the city. On this slide is the revenue for the tax levy. The general levy is increasing $691,920. That's the amount needed to cover the difference between the expenditure and the revenue. Debt levy is decreasing. This year we are paying off the 2012 bond. License and permits are increasing due to increase in projected new home construction. Intergovernmental revenue is items such as aids from county and the state, other governmental sources, and we are expecting a reduction based on past years' revenue received. Charges and service are increasing slightly. This is due to city planner, having an in-house city planner and charging for her staff time. Fine and forfeits are decreasing due to reduced fine revenue, and other revenue is interest, and that we're expecting a decrease just because interest rate hasn't been that high. And transfer in, that is mostly from water and sewer fund to pay for staff time and selected public works expenditures. This slide shows the 2021 versus the 2022 expenditures by category. Majority, public works, rec and park makes up 1/3 of the budget. And then followed by police and general government. Here we have the expenditures. The general government expenditure is expected to increase $365,000. That's and all of these ones, we're expecting a 3% wage increase for staff wages. So going back to general government, that's an increase based on the wage and increased building inspection, finance assistant, and then IT needs. Police is expected to increase. We added a full-time sergeant, and so that will be a full year worth of wage. We're planning to add a full-time admin assistant and increase part-time officer wage and CSO hours as well. Fire, the contract is increasing, so that's expected to increase $43,900. Public Works and Recreation and Park, we're adding staffing and then increase of item costs. Planning and engineering, so that was actually for police. But that's also a wage increase as well. And then transfers, we're planning transfer the $29,000 excess that we found to asphalt fund. And then the debt service, we paid off a debt this year, so that's that decrease. So the overall increase for expenditure and for revenue, that is $1.3 million. Here is the levy. I think you skipped the slide.
Oops.
Yep. So for 2022, we are expected to increase the total levy by 13%, from $5,045,000 to $5.699 million. And then our tax rate is expected to decrease from 43.522% to 43.099%. That's between 2017, the last time we increased the tax rate, till now. That is a decrease of 2.895%. And that's a significant achievement, as we've been increasing our tax levy between 2017 to 2022 by 1.98 million. So to increase our tax levy that much and to decrease the tax rate, that's a big achievement for our city.
Yeah, I think that's a great point to highlight, in that we've been able to cover our growth and expenditures from it, from the growth that's come into the city.
Absolutely.
On the one slide where we have, maybe it's the slide to come, sorry. Yeah, that one there. It would be nice sometime to see, we talk about the effects of valuation, but it'd be nice to show what the actual tax rate is on each of these funding sources.
Tax rates.
So people can see that as we grow our commercial and industrial, our actual, that's where we're going to earn more bang for our buck as far as tax rate goes, and we can lower our overall tax rate even more to the residents of the city.
Yes, that's a great point.
Thank you.
Thank you. So onto the slide, the effects of the city taxes vary, and it is directly related to change in market value as the tax rate decreases. So the property valuation for each of these property type had the following average effect based on what the county had given the city. And then below is a residential example. So the 400,000 is the median home value in city of Corcoran. And it is expected to increase 3.9% in value. So it shows, this little table just shows that based on the tax rate that's been, that was estimated for 2022, based on our final levy, the city tax portion is increasing $50. So if you do have no change to your home value, I want to point this out. If you have no change and your home value is staying the same at 400,000, that means your city tax is actually decreasing $17. And then the break-even point would be a 1% increase to your home value, where your city tax would just stay the same.
Good point.
On here is the cost of city service, and this is based on that median home value of $400,000 for the value of your home. So you would be getting, you would be paying the city $1,724 per year for city services. That breaks down to $144 per month. So that's a very good value for what you receive from the city. So the next step is to hold the budget and levy hearing, which is today, right now, and then for council to consider adopting the 2022 budget. Sorry, that says 2021, but to consider adopting 2022 budget and the levy later in this meeting.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. We'll go ahead and open the public hearing.
Thank you, Mayor. Anyone who would like to speak on the public hearing, if there's anyone in the audience who would like to, they can come up to the podium. Anyone joining us virtually can press *9 if they're joining us on a phone. Otherwise, you can press reactions and raise your hand if you're joining us virtually. You can just give it a moment. No one's currently raising their hand.
Sounds good. Still good?
We are still good, Mayor, if you want to.
I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. And we'll go on to, so 9B, C, D, and E. We've all seen quite a few times as we've worked through it this last few months. I don't think there's been any significant changes or any changes really at all since the last time we've seen these.
No, Mayor, I think the main change that we saw in front of you tonight is that change to the part-time police officer
Right.
wage. That was incremental. It was just a carryover from what was proposed in the, we generally keep that wage similar to a first-year officer. So when we made that compensation amendment, that didn't translate.
Gotcha.
That's the only thing that we really had in the wage adjustment that would be different. Otherwise, for any of those 4 items, they have not changed. Oh,
There,
Maggie had
there
one
was
other.
just one change to the fee schedule from when we presented last meeting, and that was for the solid waste hauler license application.
Gotcha.
And that was $75, just as a proposed fee. I looked at other cities to see what they were charging. It varied
So just tweaked
from
it.
a few $100s down to 60, so
Gotcha.
somewhere in between to stay reasonable.
Perfect, thank you. So unless there's anything else you want to see on these items as we go through, I know, John, you were wanting to make a motion?
Yeah, I wanted to make a motion to approve 9B, C, D, and E.
Can we do that all in one motion? Does that work?
We should be able to, as long
Cool.
as, we'll just, each of those resolutions and ordinances, we'd have the same folks on the call.
Yeah.
So that'd be just fine.
I'll second.
All righty. Any further discussion on that?
Yeah, I just, question for staff, on the salary, the full-time, part-time, do we have any issues attracting rink attendants at the $12 an hour starting salary?
You know, that's a great question. We've had a few applications received. We haven't had a ton of interest, but when I started here, I did the recruiting for those positions, and we didn't have a ton of interest back then. We certainly could look at raising that. We've had enough to fill the positions, though.
Okay, as long as we've had enough to fill the positions, I know the salary on there is
Sure.
comparable to the job market out there, is probably gonna be hard to find people, but, and then, just a question on the fee structure schedule, we're actually looking at fees, right? There's a,
Yes, thank you.
Okay, there's a
Counselor
study
Schultz.
here.
We're finalizing that fee analysis, and we'd like to bring back proposed changes in the first quarter.
Okay.
As well as some changes that we'd be looking at potentially for, related to infrastructure, I think.
I believe we
Right.
just got that back very recently, and now staff's kind of diving into it.
Yes, we're diving into it and going to be making some recommendations based on what we received.
Perfect.
Just got
Okay.
it last week.
all right, that's all, thank you.
All right, anything else? Not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go on to new business. We have another public comment opportunity if there's anyone on there. This is for items 10A, B, C, and D.
Perfect, thank you, Mayor. Anyone joining us virtually can press *9 or click reactions and raise your hand. Mayor, at this time, no one is raising their hand.
Okay. And we'll go on to 10A, which is the 2022 City Council calendar. And I'm assuming everyone took a glance at that. Is there anything that sticks out that seems like it might be a problem or you'd want to tweak? It seems pretty straightforward. What's
Well,
that?
we can always adjust the calendar on the fly.
Yep.
We certainly can, yes. I think we didn't have as many proposed changes this year with holidays, but we certainly could look at adjusting as we get closer to December or November
Okay.
as well.
Yeah. There's nothing big that stuck out to me that clearly won't work, or there's a holiday or something.
We did put one special meeting on the calendar for
election.
the 14th. Because of canvassing, we have to do it between the 3rd and the 10th day, and there's not a meeting date in between there. And it didn't make sense to necessarily move our meetings because they'd be very close together. So we're proposing the 14th. We just need a quorum of 3 individuals at least to canvass those election results. Those meetings tend to be very quick, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, depending on how many writing applicants we get. But certainly, that's the only big change that we, or proposed meeting that's not normal.
Sounds good. Okay. Do we need a motion for that, just to approve it, or do you just?
If
need-
we could get a motion for that, that'd be great. And if there's any discussion that council wants to have on work sessions, we talked a bit
Yep.
at the previous work session about having potentially another one in January to talk about next steps for water planning. I'd envision we'd talk about strategic planning. But besides that, we certainly can look at other options. We've talked about tabletop exercises for emergency management, and
Yeah.
sure, there are other items that we will be coming up with. So if there's particular topics, though, I'd be happy to take those so we can get those on the calendar.
Is there anything that comes to mind there now that we need to schedule, or do we just kind of want to do it as we go?
I think the goal setting would be good to figure
Yeah.
out in the not too distant future. But
What?
It's always hard to find a time, so I'm glad you brought it up.
Let's look at,
Yes, we
Do you
can
have any-
certainly look at a date.
You want to survey monkey it?
I can
That's a good
survey
idea.
monkey the team. We'll be looking for a couple different proposals to get folks to do the strategic planning. So that's my next step, is getting a couple proposals of folks who could come in and do that for us. And then, but I can do that concurrently with doing a survey monkey.
perfect. That sounds good.
thank you.
Then other than that, I'll make the motion to approve the 2022 city calendar as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Alrighty. 10B, the executive search firm selection. Assuming everyone got the chance to dive through the 3 responses we got. David Drown, GovHR, and last name is escaping me, sorry. AB Strategic Security Group. Is there any thoughts on which of those firms we'd like to go with, where, if anyone stood out to you?
Can I comment?
Yeah?
So what I did is I called the mayors of the towns that they had recently placed people at. And I ended up talking to quite a few people, and it was interesting because I talked to Eddie Jesus, the person who runs the search firm in Texas, and he was a character. But he'd only placed one person, and he hasn't yet in Minnesota. It's for, I think, Golden Valley.
Right.
So, he got crossed off my list. He was a nice guy, but there were too many missing pieces.
I agree.
And then I didn't hear back from, I don't think anyone who had worked with MHA, but I heard good things about Mark, who I think is the lead guy at, I talked to D. Love, who is mayor of Centerville. He had really good things to say about Mark, who is with the first organization. And then I talked to another mayor who had worked with him. And so for me, based on the people part of it, I liked that one the best.
Gotcha. Yeah. I heard from conversations I've had with people good things about both David Drown and GovHR. They both seem to have a lot more, specifically in Minnesota, especially David Drown, I believe, has the most in the last 5 years or something like that of any firm. But yeah, I agree with what you said.
Then who hired Brad away from us?
David Drown.
That was,
Yeah.
yeah. Even though I think one of the references for GovHR was, I could be mixing up, but there was potentially the person Brad replaced was a reference on the GovHR one.
Potentially.
Yeah, I saw that too. And I don't know if Brad had good things to say about those people. So I kind of lean towards that way because the references were really high for,
Yeah.
but that's all. To me, they looked so similar that there wasn't much differentiation in the proposals.
The only thing that jumped out to me that is a little different is the guarantee. I think David Drown was a 24-month guarantee on the employee if they leave the organization, whereas GovHR was 12 months, but it's if they leave or they're terminated. So it's less time, but more coverage, I guess.
One of them had I thought one of them had a condition too, if none of the candidates worked out, they would come back with additional candidate
Yes,
pool
that
without
was-
additional cost. Was that
I
GovHR?
think so.
But I agree with you, the last one on the list seemed like they were more geared towards placement of law enforcement than actual civic leaders.
That is his background.
Yeah, that's
Makes sense.
kind of what
Eddie.
I figured, so. I'm fine with the Brown firm,
David Drown?
yeah.
Thought the costs were basically the same.
They,
I like the value from the Drown proposal because you get video interviews of a larger portion of the candidate pool. It's the semifinalists, not just the finalists. And I like that they do some quantitative assessments of intelligence and personality that I didn't see on the GovHR proposal. So I feel like we'll probably get a little bit better insight into the candidates than we would just on a pure interview basis with that one. So I think we're all agreeing so far.
yeah. Let's see. Yeah, I think, Dean, did you have any?
You guys have nailed it. I'm in agreement, very much.
All right, then I will,
Excited to go through the process.
I'll entertain a motion to authorize staff to draft and enter into an agreement with David Drown and Associates.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Can't wait to see their flyer on the city of Corcoran.
Yeah. It looks nice.
We'll make sure to
Just
get
the
them
letter one.
good photos.
Yeah.
We can include some silos for you, John.
Perfect.
It's too bad St. Therese isn't done to.
Get some concept art, I bet.
I
I'm sure they'd be fine with it.
think so. That'd be great.
Here's what our town is gonna look like.
I mean, it's a big project, I don't know.
Come to work in the dark and leave in the work.
All right. Item 10C, early site grading work agreement for Bellwether property.
Thank you, Mayor. Kevin, do you want to go through this?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Excuse me, this is an early grading agreement request from Pulte Development. It's what we're calling Bellwether Newman. It's really the western half of the original Newman parcel. So on the screen, on the next page, Jessica, here's a better schematic of it. Bellwether first is on the lower southeast quadrant there, coming off of 101. And it's been developing in a counterclockwise fashion around the large wetland complex and city park areas. Kind of the highlighted area parcel in the northwest part is the Van Blaricum piece, which is half Amberley, half Bellwether. That was recently approved and actually had the first original early grading agreement with it. And so this piece is immediately south of there. So it's been through the preliminary plat process. And they're really requesting to be able to balance the dirt between Newman West and Van Blaricom, as that is basically the end of the gradable area, upland area as part of the approved development. So it's an economy there. A couple months ago, take you guys folks back a couple months ago, we've gotten a lot of requests for early grading to take advantage of seasonality, to take advantage of efficiencies. And so we brought forward and worked with the city attorney and created a pretty substantial agreement that basically transfers a lot of the same conditions that was in our development contract and just brings them forward. So there's a surety, they have to be in compliance with all the permits. They have to meet all the preliminary plat obligations, such as stormwater management, wetland impacts, tree preservation. Any of those early conditions are still requirements of this agreement. Pulte has approached nearing completion of that, so the last piece is to come and get approval from the council. So we would, in the documentation, there's a template. We're using the same template. We're following the preliminary plat conditions. And with your permission, we would take a surety. With your permission, they would be able to execute this contract and start grading early. And with that, I would be happy to answer any more specific questions, and I believe Chad Onsgaard's representing Pulte Development virtually as well, if you have questions for him specifically.
Perfect. Thank you. Any questions for Kevin or for the applicant? I had one brief one. Is there or is there not a stockpile being proposed in the grading?
There's no stockpile being proposed. Right now, if you go out on site, they're doing trunk sewer work, so it's 30 feet deep, so that those generates intermittent piles.
Right.
But there's no plan proposed for a temporary stockpile.
Gotcha.
I think their goal is to basically wrap up all the stuff, so if there's any excess, they would move it off-site, because they would no longer need it. So.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
And I should know all access would be limited to the Van Blaricom Bellwether property. So this piece does connect to the eastern end of Hunter's Ridge neighborhood, but we would restrict their access to be basically in the Pulte development area. So there would no construction access allowed in Hunter's Ridge.
Gotcha. And Jessica, I spoke to you briefly about this the other day. I don't know if it's something we'd put in to this or if it's kind of a different conversation about, remember a while back we got some complaints from people on Robert Lane about construction traffic? I don't think we ever figured out why there would be a lot of construction traffic, but it sounded like there was. So I don't know if we could put something in this or if that's a separate conversation to have to try to mitigate that.
Yeah, that's part of our DAs. We can make sure that's emphasized. Their primary access to this would be 101 off Stieg and through the development. So they're not, part of all the agreements, they're not allowed to use Stieg Road.
Gotcha.
We have staff out there monitoring it. We get calls, we react. It's something we just have to monitor,
Gotcha.
but it's in the documents that it's restricted.
Perfect. Yeah, just something to keep in mind.
Have we been, I'm sorry.
We're just going to ask, how much time is being saved through this agreement versus going through the final plat approval first?
I would say this one's a little different from Van Blaricom, because Van Blaricom, they were in for final plat at the same time. They're not in for final plat here at this point.
Okay.
I think the staff justification is they are at the end of their developable site, and it makes sense. And I think that's what their request is. So in that sense, it can range anywhere from 6 weeks to, in this case, it could be 6 months.
Okay.
Because they're not in for formal preliminary plat, or formal final plat at this time. So that's a 2-month process once they come in.
Okay.
So this would allow them a head start.
So is that what's different about this than other developments that have come in where they've wanted to develop the whole site in advance?
So what's historically we've done is when they come in for final, we historically, 3 months ago, we did not allow any early grading.
Right.
So you had to get through final plat to get early grading and achieve certain milestones in which is what we're still requiring today. So you could start early grading was after final plat, but before recording of the document. So there's a little window there that was pretty tight. 3 months ago-ish, developers have been asking, we brought to council, can we develop a more formal earlier agreement to allow us to start ahead of that? Because they felt it was advantageous to start 6 weeks, 2 months earlier due to shortened seasons. So we basically worked with the city attorney and pulled out all the same requirements that we had before,
Yeah.
developed a document that would roll into a future DA and just shifted all those requirements up front, including surety. And as part of that process, we have to come to council per our policy and get that permission to expand the grading area. So that amount of a grading has always been brought forward at final plat to say, hey, we want to just do more than what we plat in this addition. So to really do site mass grading on 50 lots is not efficient. So we always look for either watershed areas that make sense to drain. We look at where the future ponds are going to be versus upland, and we just make frankly, a judgment decision on, is this appropriate, is this reasonable? So this would be a step before that, right? Because, we did approve that for Van Blaricom, but they were in for final plat. They're not in for final plat here. So it's another kind of incremental step to early grading. Staff feels it's appropriate based on the specific site condition. And that's why we still maintain that policy to every request. Once they are nearing that threshold, we come and have a conversation with you to make sure it meets your guys' goals and policies. So that's the nuance here, is that they have not submitted for final plat.
So it doesn't change the instruction that we've given in the past, so we don't expect developers in process right now to come out and say, I want to start early grading of, 12th edition on whatever.
They would have to come talk to us, staff would have to recommend it to you guys for decision. We would not do it if they haven't had final plat. We would not do it if they don't meet the conditions that were established with final plat. We would not do it if they don't meet the permits. So we're always gonna be pushed to do stuff earlier. We feel like this is an appropriate step. We feel like we have the same assurances that we did before, but we're allowing a 2 to 6 month head start.
Yeah.
For the right reasons, we feel like that's worth your guys' consideration. So it's really up to you to maintain that standard, and we're just telling you the differences each way.
Yeah.
So this would be an incremental step towards what I would say loosening the policy, but I would say it meets the same standard. So it's really just it makes sense only because in my mind, it makes sense only because they're running out of usable space and it balances. If they had another 3 phases south of here,
Right.
part of it, that might be a different story.
Yeah.
So it's really, it's specific requests, and we will get a lot of these. We got them before, we're gonna continue to get them.
Right.
We make sure they meet a certain threshold before you guys talk, or consider them, if that makes sense.
Yep. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay. I will entertain a motion to authorize staff to execute a final version of the early site grading work agreement contingent upon the specified conditions for the future Bellwether development.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, Chamber of Commerce representative, and John, you asked for this to be on the agenda? So you
Yes.
wanna-
Sure. So I got an email. I'm a member of the I-94 Chamber of Commerce, and I was on the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce Taxation and Fiscal Policy Committee, and I think it's a good organization. And he wanted to know who, since Brad has left, and I know the guy, the director, he said, who's gonna represent Corcoran to the chamber. And I said I would ask to get a formal idea of who's gonna represent Corcoran to the chamber. On the chamber today, I'm just a member. Like, I don't think my affiliation with Corcoran or my day job is actually part of me being on the chamber. I think I just am me. So when I'll sponsor a hole, it's sponsored by John Bodema, and like, that's it. So anyways, I'm only saying, like, I don't have necessarily a work interest being a part of that organization. So, I would like, if one of you guys wants to be an official or the official rep to the City of Commerce, I said I would ask and see what you guys had to say. I'm totally open to doing it. I'm totally open to not doing it. I will be at everything they do anyways, or as much as I can. But
Here's what I thought. So I did the State of the Cities, the chamber event last January. It's already coming back up again. So I did that last year and I think it went well. I think with your involvement, I was thinking maybe you and I both could do a subcommittee or however we want to technically call it. But what do you guys think, if that works for everyone, or?
For a chamber representative?
Yeah.
Well, why did we have the city manager before do it, and not, as a non-elected person?
I think from my conversations with Brad, there's just preference. I think Ron didn't prefer to do it, the event. But
I mean, I'm fine too with leaving it as a city manager position
Oh.
role and having the interim fill in until that time too. That way there's, less responsibility for you to do, and
either way is honestly fine.
Yeah, I think cities have take different approaches. So some cities will have their staff attend and council. Some will have just staff attend. So I think really we could have a combination. It's
Gotcha.
completely up to council on how you'd like to see that proceed, but we certainly could have any direction you'd like to see on that.
Gotcha. I mean, I'm trying to think back to last year. I think there was 1 or 2 cities that had staff do it, and I want to say they cut it up into, last year was a weird year because of the COVID restrictions. They cut it up into like 4 different groups and did it on Zoom. I want to say most was elected, at least in my group, but that's a small sample size, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've attended the meeting, the State of the Cities in the past, and it's probably half and half of when it was in person. I will say from a staff perspective, Kevin and myself and Matt have been invited to other chamber events and have gone in the past. I know Kevin and I attended an event at Rush Creek, so staff is looped into getting their information and staying current with their events. And I would envision us continuing to have some sort of role as staff in attending events.
Yeah, I mean, I think Brad last year was definitely on it with me, and it helped prepare. He was definitely part of the process for sure. So I think that either way it makes a lot of sense to definitely have staff involved.
Yes.
But I guess in your conversation, John, they were looking for a specific, was it mostly point of contact, or?
I can look at the email, but I think he implied it would be one of us 5.
Gotcha.
Would be the official connector, and so I don't know, I don't know, he was not specific, like, it has to be this person.
Gotcha.
He said, I noticed Brad left, and, I can look, but I don't think it matters that much.
Right.
So,
I think if it's gonna be an elected official, it's easier just to mandate the mayor take the role.
Which is fine with me.
Because, and we don't have to think about it every election cycle.
Yeah, that's what you're saying.
I think that's,
Great.
that's fine. I'll be there too, regardless of
Yeah.
whether the mayor's there.
That sounds
And then
good.
I think staff can support
Yeah,
the mayor and
perfect.
attend as we are able.
Sounds good. That works. Okay, that's all we have for agenda items. Any staff reports or any update on the schedule other than one more meeting this year?
One more meeting this year, Mayor. We do have our upcoming meeting is on Wednesday, the 22nd. Just due to the holiday, we moved it back a day, or the holidays, I should say. We do have a few planning items on there. We'll be looking at the year-end review and hopefully setting a goal-setting date on there. We're talking about that upcoming. Then we're on to 2022.
Good deal. It'll be, I'm sure, a busy start to the year.
Yes, indeed.
Do you expect packets to still go out on Friday?
I would anticipate this packet going out on Friday
Okay.
for that Wednesday meeting.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Good
If
luck.
we can, we'd love to get them on Thursday, but.
That works too.
Just, well, as much as we can, we'll get it out early, but for sure by Friday.
Perfect. Anything else before we adjourn? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
We had only 3 hours to spare over the last time we were here, huh?